close to the end of Acts. Last part of Acts deals with Paul's life and being the apostle of Gentiles and making it to Rome. So that's the title of the message. Paul makes it to Rome, Acts 28, verses 11 through 22. Well, Acts 28, 11. And after 3 months, we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux. And landing in Syracuse, we tarried there 3 days. And from thence we fetched a compass. That's really bad translation, shouldn't it? We went around and came to Rhegium. And after 1 day, the south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli. Of all these Italian names, where we found brethren and were desired to tarry with him 7 days. And so we went toward Rome, which actually should be we went to Rome. And from thence, when the brethren heard of us, they came to meet us as far as Appii Forum and the 3 taverns, whom when Paul saw, he thanked God and took courage. And when we came to Rome, the centurion delivered the prisoners to the captain of the guard. But Paul was suffered to dwell by himself with a soldier that kept him. And it came to pass that after 3 days, Paul called the chief of the Jews together. And when they were come together, he said unto them, Men and brethren, though I have committed nothing against the people or customs of our fathers, yet was I delivered prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, would have let me go, because there was no cause of death in me. But when the Jews spake against it, I was constrained to appeal unto Caesar, not that I had aught to accuse my nation of. For this cause, therefore, have I called for you, to see you, and to speak with you, because that for the hope of Israel I am bound with this chain. I can almost see Paul raising up his hand and being chained to that Roman soldier right next to him. And they said to him, We neither receive letters out of Judea concerning thee, neither any of the brethren that came shewed or spake any harm of thee. But we desire to hear of thee what thou thinkest. For as concerning this sect, we know that everywhere it is spoken against. Paul makes it to Rome. We have 3 divisions. Number 1, hospitality of believers, verses 11 through 14. Number 2, house arrest, verses 15 through 16. Number 3, having Jewish leaders over, verses 17 to 22. Just a little bit of review. So, Paul on the way to Rome with other prisoners, Luke there being with him, and another man, I believe it was Aristarchus, another believer. And they went against Paul's advice to sell past the selling season. It was too late in the year, and they overruled Paul's advice. Of course, they got that terrible storm, wound up didn't know where they were, and they shipwrecked on the island of Malta, that is Malta. And that is where Paul was bitten by the poisonous snake and survived. And the leader of the island, his father was sick, and Paul healed him. And others were healed and possibly treated by Luke the doctor. So that gets us to, they're on the island of Malta. And that gets us to where we are. So verse 11 through 14, we see hospitality of believers. And by the way, those of you have the maps where you can kind of follow the course from Malta all the way to Rome. Not the best quality, but verse 11, and after 3 months, so they were on the island of Malta 3 months, and because it was a selling season, you did not sell during winter, so it could have been usually March. They could start selling again. In February, in the mid part of February, if the weather was good. So it's probably either mid-February to March. So they left in a ship of Alexandria that had wintered in the Isle. Their place on the island has a good harbor, no doubt it was there. Earlier, they were on a ship of Alexandria that was a grain ship. Rome depended on grain food from Egypt. And so many ships sailed from Alexandria. And this was one of them. We don't know if it was a grain ship or not. And then its sign or its figurehead was Castor and Pollux. So literally it's sons of Zeus. And of course, the translators, they told us who they were, Castor and Pollux. And on the front of the ship, on either side, they would either paint or engrave these two sons of Zeus. And these were supposed to be the gods of the sailors, the gods of navigation. So they put them up superstitiously for protection. And by the way, it was very common to ships in those days to do that. You know, rabbit's foot, good luck. And so, verse 12, and they landed at Syracuse. Syracuse, it's 80 miles to Syracuse from Malta. It is on the southeast side of Sicily, which is an island just south of Italy, the most important city of Sicily. And we stayed there 3 days. Now, Luke doesn't give any explanation. Many possibilities. It could be that the ship there, maybe they had to unload goods. Maybe they had to take on goods. Maybe the owner of the ship or the captain of the ship, maybe they had errands to do. And I probably leaned probably the wind was not right for sailing. And so, whatever reason, they stayed there for 3 days. Verse 13. And from Syracuse, we fetched a compass. And again, this is a very poor translation. It's a verb. It really means you just go around. In nautical terms, they would use the term we tacked. And so they couldn't sail directly, probably because of the wind, and so they would kind of make circles, probably close to land. And by the way, compass was not used in Europe for navigation until the 1100s. So this is a poor translation. You see the word compass in the Bible usually means to circle or go around. And then they came to Rhegium. Again, you can see that on your map. And that is about 70 miles to Rhegium. You look at your map and notice Italy, and the bottom of it is shaped like a boot. And so Rhegium would be on the toe of Italy. You see that on your map. And and by the way, Rhegium was right opposite Messina of Sicily, and near the north, I think, promontory point of Sicily. In that area, there was a famous whirlpool of Charybdis that was very dangerous. And there was also a rock of, I don't know how to say it right, Scylla, Scylla or Scylla. And those were too dangerous. I also read, and I'm assuming that it was true, that they had an earthquake in the 20th century, and these two features were gone after the earthquake. So there, and reached them now. They made it to Italy, and they waited today, and then the south wind blew. And that's just what they're made for. The south wind blew. They were going north. They needed that south wind, and they got the south wind. And the next day, they went to Puteoli. By sea, it's about 180 miles to Puteoli. That is the port of Naples. And if you have good sailing, they can make that trip in about 26 hours. So they're farther up the western coast of Italy, and they land at Puteoli. And there, they found believers there in Puteoli. I'm going to talk about this. Rome had a strong Christian church. We have no idea how it was founded. No idea. The New Testament doesn't tell us. The church fathers, they don't tell us. We know at the day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came and indwelled believers, that there were people there celebrating the Jewish feast of Pentecost. Men then became believers, and they went to their homes, which they come from all over the Roman Empire, and this is a possibility. It could even be that some of Paul's converts in his 3 missionary journeys had moved to Rome. It is even possible that when Paul, when he was Saul of Tarsus, and persecuted the believers, that they left the Holy Land and went other places that could be there. We have no idea how the church at Rome was established, but there was a strong church there. And about 3 years before this, Paul wrote the book of Romans, and in that he has his desire. He really wanted to see and visit the believers at Rome. He kind of gets his chance, not really on his terms, but he gets to go there. So they get to Puteoli, and there are believers there, and so they begged Paul and Luke, and I don't know if they still had all the prisoners, because the centurion obviously was there, to stay with them 7 days. Wow, that's quite an offer. So obviously the centurion, I believe his name is Julius, allowed this to happen. Certainly, Paul had kind of become the leader of the ship. God had given him a promise on the ship when there was a storm that they would all make it, but the ship wouldn't. And that Paul, you're gonna go to Rome and you're gonna appear before Caesar. And everyone on this ship will live. And that all came to pass. And right before they made their attempt for land, they had fasted for many days, and Paul advised them to eat food, and they did. So I think the centurion now he would listen to Paul. And it could be that the centurion had business there in Puteoli. It is very possible that he wanted to send one of his soldiers, a messenger, on to Rome and tell him, listen, we have this prisoner Paul, and we're coming. It'll be a while before we get there. That's very possible. Whatever reason, the centurion allowed them to do that, so for 7 days, they were guests of other believers in Puteoli. That's really neat. And so, we went to Rome, which is Paul's object. Now we go to verses 15 to 16. It was Paul under house arrest. And there from this, from Puteoli, when the brothers heard of us, now here are other believers in Rome. And again, we don't know how they heard that Paul was in Puteoli and headed for Rome, but they found out. The centurion sent a messenger. It is very possible that Aristarchus, a believer traveling with Luke and Paul, that Paul sends him on. But yet believers in Rome, and they hear that Paul is coming. Paul's already written them a letter that he wants to see them, and so they're not waiting for Paul to get to them. They're sending a delegation to Paul. I believe it's actually 2 different groups. And so the other believers heard Luke says of us, Paul and Luke and others, and they came to meet us as far as the Appii Forum. The Appii Forum is about 43 miles from Rome. It is a place where you can lodge, where you can be refreshed. By the way, it had a bad reputation, and it was known as a haunt of thieves, thugs, and swindlers. Probably don't want to stay there very long. Get out there with all your belongings. But believers came there, and then also farther north, close to Rome, the three taverns, or the three inns, and that was about 30 miles from Rome. So I believe it was two different groups of Christians came to meet Paul, no doubt being with him and visiting with him, and no doubt encouraging him. And when Paul saw these believers coming to meet him, by the way, that word meet can be used to stand an official delegation to meet an important figure, an important person. And interesting that they use that word of believers coming to see Paul, who of course was the apostle to the Gentiles. And when Paul saw these other believers, he thanked God and took courage. This was encouragement for Paul. Verse 16, and they made it to Rome, and the centurion delivered the prisoners to the captain of the guard. This may have been the Praetorian Guard, and they were the ones who were responsible for making sure that all those that had come, especially prisoners that had come to be taken to appear before Caesar, that they would be held in custody, and they would make it Caesar. And I believe there were only actually two men who had this position. But Paul himself was suffered. Yeah, that's not a good word. The word means he allowed to dwell by himself with a soldier that kept him. So he didn't have to go to prison in Rome. This is a much better situation than going to a prison in Rome. But he is chained to a soldier. And that soldier was responsible for him. So later on in this chapter, we're told that Paul was in that hired house for 2 years, obviously chained a soldier. He was under house arrest, so probably never got to leave. But he could have as many visitors, anybody that could come and see Paul, they could come. And the soldier that was chained to Paul on his right hand or wrist, you usually had a soldier that would stay during the day, and he was relieved by another soldier at night, and then the next day another soldier. So for 2 years, Paul had captive audiences of soldiers to witness to. Imagine the influence that Paul got to give to this special Roman soldiers during his 2 years, and all the other visitors who came to see him. So it really, Paul wouldn't, on his wish list, he wouldn't have said, I want to go to Rome, but I want to get there by shipwreck, by many days in a storm where we have no idea where we are, and getting bit by a poisonous snake, and being under house arrest. No, that wouldn't be the way I would choose to go to Rome, but it was God's choice. And he made it to Rome, and he's able to do, no doubt, great ministry there in Rome. And so Paul was under house arrest. Now, number 3, in verses 17 to 22, so Paul is having Jewish leaders over. And it came to pass that after 3 days, Paul called the chief, literally the first ones of the Jews, together. That be the leaders of the Jewish synagogues. My understanding that they had many synagogues in Rome. Now, early before this, Claudius was emperor, and he expelled all the Jews out of Rome. But obviously that has no longer enforced. Now you have a new emperor who is Nero. But these are the early days of Nero. And Nero will later become the great persecutor of Christians. Nero will burn Rome and blame it on the Christians, and then really go after him. And the things that he did were terrible. But that was later. So Nero now is not persecuting Jews or Christians. And so, obviously, the Jews had gone back. So, 3 days, Paul meets with the Jewish leaders. Men and brothers, treats them with respect. Though I have committed nothing against the people, the Jews, Paul said, I've done no wrong against the Jewish people, and he didn't, or against the customs of our fathers. Paul wasn't breaking the law. He was obeying it the best that he could. Yet was I delivered prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans. And of course, the reason why the Romans found it Paul was because Paul was just outside the temple and the Jews were trying to beat him to death. And they saw what was going on at the fortress on the hill, and since soldiers had stayed Paul, the Jews came and accused him, and then he was sent to Caesarea. The Jews again came and accused him, and delivered in the hands of the Romans. Verse 18, who, when they examined me, both Felix and Festus, they would have let me go because there was no cause of death in me. They all agreed Paul had committed no crime against the Roman Empire. He had committed no capital offense, and he didn't deserve to be executed. In fact, he should have been let go. Verse 19. But when the Jews spake against him, in fact, that last time, what the Jews do, they requested that Paul be sent back to Jerusalem so they could try him. Time out here. Let me translate that for you. What it means is the Jews wanted to attack the party when Paul was coming back and kill him before he even got to trial. They didn't want to try him, they wanted to kill him. And I believe that was their plan. Earlier they had that plan. So Paul obviously knew what they wanted to do, and he thought, I had no choice. I have to appeal unto Caesar, which he did. And the Roman authorities honored that. He said, not that I had ought to accuse my nation of. The majority of the Jews in that day rejected Jesus as their Messiah. That's true. If you read the book of Romans, you will see that Paul had a heart for the Jews, even though they were in darkness and had rejected Jesus as their Messiah. And I believe he expresses that he would give his own soul if the Jewish nation as a whole could be saved. That's how much he loved the Jewish nation, even though he was persecuted by many of the non-believing Jews. So I didn't have anything to accuse my nation of. So Paul said, and this is the reason why I have called for you. I want to see you, I want to speak with you. I want to give you my side of the story, because I am a prisoner. See these chains on my arm? I'm a prisoner now because of the hope of Israel. The hope of Israel, no doubt, I think his intimations of the Messiah has come. Messiah Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, is a Messiah. The hope of Israel is that all the promises that God made in the Old Testament to all the Jewish people, now they had come to pass in the faith, in believing in Jesus Christ. Verse 21. And so the Jewish leaders, they said to him, we haven't received any letters from the leaders in Judea about you. We don't know whether or not they ever sent any or not. Paul may very well have got there because, they sailed when they shouldn't have, and they had to wait 3 months. And then when they got to Rome, they probably went as quickly as they could sail. So probably any letters that went to the Jewish leaders and synagogues in Rome hadn't made it yet because they hadn't had time. We don't know if they sent letters, they just hadn't got there yet. Neither have any of the brothers, other Jews that have came, really said anything about you. Verse 22. But we desire, and the word desire means we deem it proper or due. We think it's a good thing to hear of you what you think. We want to hear your side of the story. For us concerning this sect, and remember originally they were called followers of Jesus of Nazareth, or followers of the way. But Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. No man comes to the Father but by me. And so they refer to that as a sect, like Sadducees or Pharisees would be a sect of the Jews. So here they call Christianity a sect of the Jews. But we know that everywhere this system, Christianity, followers of Jesus, that it has been spoken against. And that was true. But they wanted to hear more about it. And they would. And that would be, Lord willing, that would be next week's message. So we have 3 lessons here. We want to have a lesson of encouragement. So Paul was encouraged at Puteoli believers and at the Forum of Attica and then at 3 taverns. By the way, Paul traveled the great Appian Road. That road was famous. Rome built a tremendous system of roads from leading to Rome. The Appian Way is one of the most famous. And by the way, there are parts of that Appian Road that still exist today in its original form. And you could go to Rome in some of those sections, probably walk over the same road that Paul walked on his way to Rome. That's amazing. But Paul got encouragement from other believers. And we as believers need to encourage each other because, some of us are on the mountain, some of us are in the valley, and others we're going from one to the other. So, and I'm glad we're not all on the bottom at the same time. We'd be a sad bunch, wouldn't we? So, when our brothers and sisters are on the bottom, we need to help them and encourage them. Number 2, God kept his promise. He said, you must be brought before Caesar, and Paul was about to come to truth. So he kept his word. Every sailor, every occupant of that boat, that shipwreck, every one of them lived. And Paul indeed would make it to Rome and be able to give his testimony before Caesar. And then thirdly, we see that Paul got the desire of his heart. I mentioned this already 3 years ago. Paul had written the letter to Roman believers, that he wanted to see them. And now he's getting the desire of his heart, which I believe is a good fulfillment of Psalm 37:4. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Paul did that. He delighted in the Lord, and God gave him his desire of going to Rome and being able to meet with the Roman believers in Rome. So my challenge is to you to do this. Delight yourself in the Lord and let him give you the desires of your heart. Obviously, if you see this on Facebook, YouTube, here today, you don't know Jesus is Lord, let this be the day that you admit you're a sinner and realize that Jesus died for your sins, and ask for forgiveness. Commit to Jesus as Lord and commit your life to him from now on. Do that. Commit to Jesus. Ask for forgiveness, and God will give you the gift of eternal life, and you'll live forever. May God bless his word. Gary, would you close us in prayer?
Dear Father, thank you